Oh, there's Charlita. Mr. Kreitz, sorry about not getting to you earlier. I came up here at 9:30 and all the conference rooms were locked. No surprise. So then, you know, when somebody finally comes to open it for somebody else who had called, they said, "Oh no, you have to go down to B1 to get approval to get into the office." Okay. So I go down to B1 after the lady finally comes, and I say to the guy, "Okay, we're elections commission. We've got this, okay, building facilities didn't notify you, but we're in the office. Okay, go ahead, back up. Then we get up, and then kind of the supervisor comes in and says, "Yeah, you go down to B1 before your meeting, and you can get a key from them." Well, they didn't offer me a key when I was down there. So then they had to call the other lady. Anyway, it was just like,
not a problem. Not a
give
problem.
me a break. Help me.
Phil, we're at remote workplace. Didn't anybody tell you that? I mean, that's your issue.
I know. I'm just incapable of doing anything.
Phil, it's 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock. Do we have everybody?
I think we have, unless Otto is going to show up, even though he said he wasn't. I think everybody else is present. I allowed Charlita in earlier.
Good.
So she should be present.
And Otto had indicated to me that he was not going to be able to make it too. So I think we can go ahead and get started. It's now 10 o'clock. So I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Ohio Elections Commission of February 18, 2021. Mr. Richter, if you would please call the roll.
Mr. Bromer?
Here.
Mr. Norman?
I am here.
Ms. Cunningham?
Here.
Ms. Tavares?
Here.
Ms. Kaufman?
Here.
Mr. Craig?
Here.
All others, Mr. Beatty is not present. He had indicated he was going to have a conflict and would not be present. All other members are present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to excuse Mr. Beatty's absence for good cause.
So move. Bromer.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye or raising your right hand. Aye.
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 Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda would be the approval of the regular meeting minutes of January 28, 2021. I believe everybody should have received a copy of the most recent minutes.
Yeah, and I will add, Mr. Chair, you had reflected, you had indicated to me there was one change you wanted made. I made that change and resent the minutes to everybody yesterday. So the minutes have been updated for what was sent a week ago, but they're essentially the same. There was like one or two words that were.
All right, very good. Thank you. If there's no additions or corrections, then I'll entertain a motion that we approve the regular meeting minutes of January 28, 2021.
So moved, Tavares.
Second, Norman.
Okay, we have a motion that's been duly seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye or raising your right hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on. Mr. Richter, in terms of order, I noticed that we have a number of people on the call this morning. Do we want to handle any of those out of order before we start the preliminary review?
Well, I would say yes, but my indication would be to, let's start with the preliminary reviews, and I will just go ahead and introduce them. You can indicate they're acknowledged. Item number 1, Miller versus Denard, 2020 G-005, has been withdrawn. Pursuant to statute, a matter can be withdrawn at any time prior to the commission first taking it up for consideration. That has been done here, and so there's no further action required, just merely acknowledging it for the record.
So acknowledged.
Item number 2, Mitchell versus Perales, 2020 G-031. Again, that matter has been withdrawn by the complainant, and so therefore no further action aside from an acknowledgement is done.
So acknowledged.
Thank you. Item number 3, Miller versus Progress and Growth PAC. That too has been withdrawn by the complainant, and therefore it is no longer before the commission. It simply needs to be acknowledged.
So acknowledged. So
Okay,
acknowledged,
thank you.
pardon me.
Next, I would recommend that we go to the second page of the worksheet that I sent to you, the working agenda. Item number 7, case number 2020R-394, Catherine Iaconis. Ms. Iaconis is present. I will bring her to the spotlight. This case has come to the commission on a couple of different occasions and was continued to give Ms. Iaconis additional time to file her report with the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections. It was reflected to us that the reports were filed. You can see my recommendation is to find a violation, but for good cause, not impose a fine or refer the matter for further prosecution. Ms. Iaconis, we prefer to see you. I am not seeing you. I don't know if anybody else is, Chris. No.
I can see her, Mr. Richter.
Oh, you
She's
can?
there, yes.
She's there.
We can
Okay.
see her.
Okay. And so if there's any additional comments you would like to make, Ms. Iaconis, otherwise you've heard my recommendation.
And I'm sorry,
Do you want to swear the
what was the
witness?
prosecution?
Oh, yeah.
part of
Ms.
it?
Iaconis, please raise your hand if you're going to make additional comment. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much.
Just so we're clear, I think the witness raised her left hand.
Oh, sorry. I do.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I want a clarification on what you said, something about prosecution.
I said that my recommendation was for the commission to find that there was a violation of the statute because the reports were not timely filed. But for good cause, the commission would not impose a fine or refer the matter for further prosecution.
Got it. So then I just finish up with the Cuyahoga County with whatever they need and I'm good.
Correct. The board has indicated after my staff talked to Mary yesterday that they were satisfied with what you had filed so far. If there are any future reports, you would certainly need to make those.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Questions by the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we follow the executive director's recommendation. This is Commissioner Norman.
Do we have a second?
Second, Kaufman.
All right, we have a motion that's been duly seconded to find a violation and for good cause not impose a fine or refer the matter for prosecution. Questions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye or raising your right hand.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Iaconis.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. The next matter I would bring to the commission is item number 5, case number 2019 R-480 to Panu Gornale. Aisha, come on.
Yes. Right.
There we go. I'm trying to spotlight you, Ms. Ms. Alcorn is present. This matter was continued for a previous meeting. I've talked to and I reflected all this in a response to you all yesterday. I've indicated to Ms. Alcorn that I was going to go forward with this. She can certainly make an additional statement to you. She did submit a statement to the commission this morning where she said she filed everything with the board and worked with David Landon would be the gentleman's name, is my understanding. I talked to a different person there who works with David named Kathy, who indicated that the reports were not complete yet. And so my recommendation at this point was that the commission would find a violation and impose a $25 a day fine. Certainly, if the commission wants to hear from Ms. Alcorn, we could continue the matter to a further date if that's what the commission would prefer to do, to give her additional time to bring her filings into compliance. She had the understanding that they were complete. Like I said, when I talked to the board, they indicated that they had problems and could not do anything. Ms. Alcorn, if you wish to make a statement further, I would ask you to raise your hand and swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead, Ms. Alcorn.
Okay. I just wanted to say that I had tried to talk to Kathy multiple times and get, kind of like an itemized list of exactly what was wrong because I've never done this before. I just did this for a friend to help him out. I'm not, well versed in campaign finance or anything like that. So when I went in Tuesday, I worked with David and he explained, exactly how to fill everything out, and told me, well, I don't need to audit this since I pretty much did it myself. I haven't had the ability to get a whole lot done. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I've been unemployed for 2 years now. I've been struggling with this, and I just really need some help to get this done. I want to make sure that I get this done and correct everything. If I could just get some help and figure out exactly what's wrong, that would be great.
Okay, thank you for your statement. Commission members have any questions?
This is Commissioner Norman. Ma'am, if this were continued to our next meeting, March 11th, do you think that would give you enough time to finally get this sorted out so that we can actually make a determination on it?
I do believe so, yes.
Is that what you would like the commission to do?
Yes, please.
Any other questions by the commission? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we continue this to the March 11 meeting. This is Commissioner Norman.
Second, Commissioner Tavares.
Very good. We have a motion to continue this matter until March the 11th, 2021, which has been duly seconded. Further discussion or comments by the commission? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye or raising your right hand.
Aye.
Opposed, same signs. Motion carries. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Alcorn. This matter has been continued until March the 11th, 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next matter I would bring to the commission is item number 8. It's under the reconsideration cases, case number 2018 R-082. Weinemiller for president of city council. Andrew Weinemiller is the candidate. He is present as well. You can see that my recommendation is to reconsider all the outstanding matters that we have, vacate the previous findings, consolidate cases, find a violation, and impose a fine of $250. As you can look at the ICW, Mr. Weinemiller has had a number of cases. He has also moved out of state, currently lives in North Carolina. He and I had a conversation last week. If you look at the ICW, you can also see I synopsized the response that he had submitted to the commission, explaining the facts and circumstances of the case from his perspective. If the commission would like to hear further from Mr. Weinemiller, or Mr. Weiner, if you would like to make an additional statement, I would ask you to be sworn. You would raise your hand. And do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, and I don't really have any statement beyond the affidavit that I sent in, unless any members of the commission would have questions for me.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Questions, comments by the commission members?
I have a question for Phil.
Go ahead.
I know typically what we look at are violations within the past 5 years. I saw 2. There are some attendant circumstances, at least based upon the affidavit and the information submitted. Can you illuminate for the commission why you came to the figure of 250?
Because that was a part of one of the previous findings that the commission made, in terms of getting a reconsideration before the commission, was the payment of a fine of $250. I did take into considering the number of further outstanding matters even beyond that. I felt that that was a fair and equivalent number. I'm not going to say that Mr. Weinemiller, I can let him speak for himself as to the fairness of that. But I think in our conversation, he didn't object openly to that amount, considering what the other fine amounts would be. He has received, I think, a number of calls from whoever it is that the Attorney General's office that does collection matters, and he's just trying to get this matter behind him, particularly considering he's moved out of state.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move we concur with the recommendation of the executive director.
We have a motion. Do we second?
Cunningham, second.
Okay, we have a motion to go, and that's been duly seconded. That would follow the recommendation of the executive director. Further discussion or comment? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye or raising your right hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you
Thank
much.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for reconsidering. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, I would direct the commission to item number 6. Where'd he go? I've lost Mr. Landon on my list. Oh, no, Mr. Spitzer's who I'm looking for, not Mr. Landon. Item number 6, case number 2020-R-308. It's a referral from the Marion County Board of Elections. Landon for Marion. I'm trying to spotlight counsel for the respondent. Landon for Marion and their treasurer. My recommendation is to find a violation and impose a fine of $100. Mr. Spitzer is counsel, I believe, for Mr. Landon in the committee, although he can speak to that specifically. I don't think he's technically the counsel for the treasurer. If the treasurer was going to act separately, he can speak to that though. But that's who is present. He certainly would have the ability to address the commission on behalf of this client. And if there are any questions that the commission has, they can pose them after Mr. Spitzer has a statement. Mr. Spitzer, go ahead.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Richter. First off, I just want to thank the commission for their time and consideration in this case. I did receive Executive Director Richter's recommendation, shared the same with my clients. Mr. Richter, I just want to confirm, was that recommendation also that there would be no referral for prosecution of any potential criminal offenses?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Part of what Mr. Richter, Director Richter just mentioned, just like to state that this case involved the Landon for Marion campaign, not necessarily Mr. Landon himself. My clients would stress that any issues with respect to their campaign finance filings were made inadvertently. They met several times with the local director and deputy director. I believe filed at least 13 amended reports in order to correct any deficiencies. One of the problems that they wanted to make sure was relayed to the commission was that it was kind of a snowball effect. There was an initial problem in their filings, and then they would go back and meet with the parties, and then there would be new issues, which is why that led to so many amended reports. Would just like the commission to consider that both Mr. Landon and Mr. Watts and everybody on the Landon for Marion campaign demonstrated that their intent was always to comply with all the filing requirements, which I think can be demonstrated by their numerous meetings and amended reports. Neither party has ever been before this commission previously. I have spoken with them. They've accepted Executive Director's Richter's recommendation of the technical violation and $100 fine. We would ask for the commission to accept that recommendation here this morning as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spitzer. Questions, comments by members of the commission? All right, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we follow the executive director's recommendation. This is Norman.
All right, we have a motion to follow the executive director's recommendation of finding a violation and imposing a fine of $100. Do we have a second?
Second,
Second,
Commissioner
Kaufman.
Tavares.
All right. Did you get that, Phil?
Yep, Ms. Tavares beat Ms. Cunningham to the punch, I think.
Okay. Any further discussion by the commission? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you again, Mr. Spitzer. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I know Mr. Hughes is trying to reach out to a couple of the other people that are listed as attendees and participants. I know some, are with the press. Obviously, Mr. Hartman, Mr. Camrus, and Mr. McTighe are all here on 33. Some are, I'm sure, with the press. There's a couple of phone numbers. 740-223-4090, 740-223-4000, and 614-205-8133 that I'm not sure if they are here with a case or just here to
Understand.
otherwise address a matter. I guess not knowing if they are with any particular group, as it were, my inclination is to then go back to 2020G-033 and address that case.
Okay, that sounds good.
And that way we know who we're going to hear from there. And so I guess I'll go ahead and say, let's call item number 4, case number 2020G-033. This is a complaint against the Move Forward PAC and the Hamilton County Democratic Party concerning improper. Yeah.
I want to interject very quickly. I'm going to need to recuse myself in connection with this case. And I've asked Commissioner Cunningham to go ahead and handle the proceeding.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Understood. Anyway, it's improper corporate contributions is the essence of the case. I have circulated the complaint and the response and the motion to dismiss that was submitted by Mr. McTighe on behalf of the Hamilton County Democratic Party. You have all those materials. Based on the written submissions to the commission, you can see my recommendations to find violations against both parties, find good cause against the Hamilton County Democratic Party, impose a fine of $100 against the Move Forward PAC. Mr. Hartman is here on behalf of the complainants. We can hear from him and then eventually hear from Mr. McTighe and I guess I'd go Mr. Cameras first as the first name party unless he wants to defer, and then Mr. McTighe. Mr. Hartman, or I guess Mr. Cunningham, now that you are chairing the meeting, would you like to go ahead and hear from party? Is there anything else you want to say as it relates to the nature of the argument?
Well, I'm going to start. This is Commissioner Cunningham, and I'm going to be at least chair for the purposes of the hearing. Phil, before we get started on the hearing, I want you to remind commissioners of the number of votes that it takes to take action in this decision. Also want to raise that we have 6 commissioners present and 1 commissioner recused, so a total of 5 commissioners in the moment who can hear the proceedings. And then after you make your comment, I'll follow up with that. Go ahead, Phil.
That's fine. Yeah, no. In order for the commission to take action, it takes a majority of the whole commission. So therefore, 4 persons must vote to do something, whether it's set the matter for hearing, whether it's find no violation, whether it's to find a violation. Those are the 3 things essentially the commission could do. And again, it takes 4 of the 7, even though 7 aren't participating. Once the commission has established a quorum and is able to go forward with a meeting of 5 persons, and obviously we had 6 in order to commence the meeting, the commission is certainly able to go forward and hear this case.
That said, I raised to commission members whether we want to give the parties the opportunity to continue till they have the full complement available, which is 6 commissioners, or whether we want to proceed with the commission without giving them that opportunity. Commissioners, I welcome your input.
I suppose, I guess I would leave it up to the parties who are here. I'm inclined to say, we as a board or we as a commission have been able to proceed. I don't see a reason why we can't, but if there are parties who are before the commission be better served to have the full 7 commissioners present when it takes place, then I would defer to them.
Other commissioners?
Commissioner Tavares, I would agree with the statement that was just shared by Commissioner Scott.
Any other comments by commissioners?
Commissioner Brammer, I would agree also. I think it's up to the parties.
Okay. Commissioner Kaufman, any comments?
I agree. I concur with what everyone has said at this point.
Okay. So that said, I leave it to the parties if any party desires to continuance to a meeting where you will not have 7 commissioners. Commissioner Kreitz's conflict is not going to go away. The maximum number of commissioners you would have is 6. If you want to wait to proceed till there's a complement of 6 members present, the commission will certainly respect that and continue the case to a future date. If you want to proceed today, we are prepared to hear and very capable of hearing the case. We don't feel that it's necessary as a commission to have all 6 members, and certainly not under our rules, but we do want to be fair to the parties. We'll hear first from the counsel for the plaintiff. Complainant?
No problem. Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Kurt Hartman on behalf of the complainant, Mark Miller. I guess one question, if I may pause it back. Are we looking for full adjudication today? Or are we simply looking to proceed under the probable cause process and then potentially setting it out for a full hearing with full evidence? I think that's...
Well, either could happen. The commission could decide to dispose of the case today as part of a preliminary review, or they could set the matter for full hearing. And we won't know that until we hear the evidence and argument of the parties. So I cannot tell you at this moment which way that will go, but it could go either way.
No, but I guess my little concern is if we are doing a full adjudication, it is important to have as the full complement of the commission as possible. I've been before the commission previously where actually I had to do a full commission hearing with only 5 members. And thus it kind of places a complainant at a strategic or procedural disadvantage. The respondents only have to convince, in that case, only 2 members not to do something, and you don't have your 4 votes. And so therefore I would actually prefer to have as many votes in the pool, if you will, just in fairness that, I think when you do it with 5, you create a distinct disadvantage to the complainants in favor of.
Mr. Hartman's frozen on my screen. Is everybody else experiencing that?
Correct.
I heard
Okay.
him kind of stop. Yes.
Okay.
But beyond that,
Mr. Hartman, we're not hearing you we see you frozen, but we're not hearing you.
There he's
you go.
back.
You're back. So given what were beginning, but what I understood you to say, are you saying that you are requesting that the matter be continued till there are 6 members present?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm certainly want to hear from the respondents as well. Does council want to address, either council want to address the commission on the matter?
Sure. This is Mike Cameras. I'm here on behalf of the Move Forward PAC. I think it would be my client's preference that we move forward today. You've been well briefed by council. Mr. Richter's put together a recommendation. Certainly my client is hopeful to resolve this, and I think this may be a little bit of a unique circumstance in that with the recusal that, as you mentioned, won't be going away whether we do this now or in the future. It's really, we're down 1 person, and the way the world is right now, who knows next meeting if we'd be down 1 person or the following meeting down 1 person. So really at just down 1 person, I don't know that it really creates any type of strategic advantage or disadvantage for anyone. And council is here and present. We've had plenty of time to brief each of you and to review Mr. Richter's recommendation, and my client's prepared to proceed today.
Ms. Cunningham, yes, this is Don McTighe on behalf of the Hamilton County Democratic Party and its treasurer, Pete McClendon. I agree with everything that Mr. Cameras just indicated. We are fully prepared to argue the case today. The one thing I would add is that really the issues before the commission is going to come down to a factual issue about interpreting the statutes or applying the statutes that are on the books. There isn't a factual dispute that would necessitate an evidentiary hearing. So I think that things have been briefed and we're prepared to make the arguments, and we, Hamilton County Democratic Party would prefer to, wrap the case up. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you. Commission members, any discussion?
Well, I think we, referring to the parties, we have one party who has indicated they would like to continue this matter. I will say in the COVID era, we've been doing these commission hearings by live video. I think we've been very easily being able to get attendance of all commissioners. So I think we should respect what we said previously, which is defer to the parties. We've got somebody who would like to continue. So my recommendation would be that's what we do.
Any other comments by commission members or a motion?
I'm just going to, oh, I'm sorry. What'd you say, Scott? I apologize. I walked over you.
I said I would move that we continue the matter.
Is there a second?
I don't think it needs to be a long delay. I think we can move it to our next hearing on March 11th, but just move it so that we have a chance to have everybody here.
Mr. Richter, what's our agenda look like on that meeting?
Not that much. And so that was going to be my comment. I mean, I haven't heard from Mr. Beatty as it relates to the 11th, but while the other 5 were here, I was going to say, is there any problem? Does anybody anticipate March 11th being a problem? Otherwise, I'd say let's bring it back on March 11th and assume Mr. Beatty will be present, because he has, all he indicated was today was a problem.
We have a pending motion. Is there a second? Or do commissioners want to check their calendars?
I'm looking at mine at the moment. I've got a status conference by phone at 11 o'clock, but I presume that I can get somebody else to cover that for me if we have a hearing that runs over.
Ms. Cunningham, Commissioner Cunningham, Kurt Hartman. I've conferred. I think we're fine going today. We can do today. Let's just get it over with. I've talked to my client. We're fine.
Okay. Are you? All right. Okay. Thank you. Commission, is everyone prepared to move forward?
I believe
yes.
Okay.
Thank you. We're going to start with a summary from the executive director, and then we will ask the complainant to present their case. Mr. Richter?
Again, this is a complaint asserting that there were improper contributions from the Move Forward PAC, a ballot issue PAC, to the Hamilton County Democratic Party. The complaint asserts that there's approximately $11,000 that was contributed from the Move Forward PAC that did receive corporate contributions in its campaign finance reporting to the Hamilton County Democratic Party in 3 or 4 different contributions. Both the Move Forward PAC and the Hamilton County Democratic Party has asserted that one of the listed contributions by the Hamilton County Democratic Party of $2,500 was actually essentially a double count.
I talked to you. You said okay. Okay, thanks.
Was essentially a double count by the Hamilton County Democratic Party. Subsequently, the Democratic Party acknowledged that. Also, subsequently, there was also an assertion or an allegation that the Move Forward PAC was obligated to file a pre-general campaign finance report based on the contributions that it made to the Democratic Party. In the intervening period, the funds in question have been returned by the Hamilton County Democratic Party to the Move Forward PAC. And in addition, the Move Forward PAC, even though they don't believe they were necessarily required to do so, has subsequently filed a pre-general election report in an effort to just clarify the circumstances, I think. So that's kind of the current status of the case. We could certainly hear from Mr. Hartman on behalf of his client.
No problem.
Any
Okay.
questions to the executive director from any commission member? Hearing
No.
none, Mr. Hartman, you have the floor.
No, thank you. Phil, do I have share screening capability?
You should, if you go to the top, toward the top right-hand corner of your screen, at least according to when Chris and I talked yesterday, there should be like a little television screen with an arrow in it.
Yes.
That I think if you hit that, you are able to share your content with the entirety, and it is there. So yes,
Okay.
go ahead.
Very good.
Just
Thank
so, just so council's aware, we reviewed, obviously we reviewed all the materials.
I understand that. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
You know, the issue in this case arises from a well-established, long-established prohibition against ballot issue committees giving contributions to candidates or to political parties. And the reason for that is ballot issue committees can accept corporate contributions, but corporations cannot contribute to either candidates or political parties. It's been well established, long established. If you go to the campaign finance book put out by the Ohio Secretary of State, who as the chief election official in the state of Ohio promulgates rules, and whose rulings have to be given a presumption of correctness. In chapter 8 of that book, it talks about ballot issue committees, and it says, due to the fact that a ballot issue committee may accept contributions that other type of committees are prohibited from accepting, a ballot issue committee may not make a contribution to a candidate's campaign committee, a political party, etc. That is the prohibition that has been violated. And the basis of that is 3599.03A1, which prohibits corporate funds and labor organizations directly or indirectly contributing to a candidate or to a political party. And in this case, we clearly have an indirect contribution of those funds to a political party. You know, part of the argument on the merits that Mr. McTighe makes, I think if you accept his argument, there would be no prohibition against a ballot issue committee contributing to a candidate's campaign committee, i.e. a way to funnel corporate contributions to candidates. That is not the intent of the legislature, and it is directly prohibited by the pronouncement of the chief election official, the Ohio Secretary of State. And so I think the violation is clearly established. I think really the issue that we have to come to is what is the appropriate penalty. Mr. Victor has shared with us that he provided to the commission earlier. And if you look at the administrative code of the commission, you know, that good cause may be a basis to not impose a fine. But the question becomes, what are you basing good cause upon? You guys are, the commission is a quasi-judicial administrative proceeding. And as in any courtroom, you receive evidence, you subject evidence to cross-examination. Right now, all we've got is an affidavit from the executive director of the Hamilton County Democrat Party. And it's interesting, I would characterize it's a self-serving affidavit, which I don't have a problem with an affidavit being self-serving. But you got to recognize an affidavit, it's self-serving. It gives you only the facts that that party, the proponent, wants you to know, and it couches it in language beneficial to the proponent. If you look again back to the commission, to the administrative code, factors that the commission is supposed to consider in terms of imposing a penalty is the nature and circumstances of the violation. And I would submit to the commission at this stage, the commission does not have a full evidentiary record upon which to make that determination. Because if you look at what is the role of commission? Granted, that primary goal is to ensure compliance with the campaign finance laws of the state of Ohio. But there's a second mission really that goes with that, and that is for transparency, to expose to the public the facts and circumstances when violations occur. And that is all of the facts and circumstances, not the facts and circumstances that one party through a self-serving affidavit wants to posit. And so there are serious issues. It's interesting. We've heard nothing from either treasurer of the Move Forward PAC or the Hamilton County Democratic Party. Nothing. And also I would say, these treasurers, we had a hearing, one of your cases earlier today, Miss Alcorn, I felt empathetic for her because she was saying, I'm just trying to help out a friend. I've not done this stuff. That's not the situation we have in this case. These are not political novices. These people, the treasurers, have been involved in politics for years, if not decades. You have a major political party in one of the major urban counties involved. And the treasurer of the Move Forward PAC is the former party chairman of a major political party in that urban county. Both of them have been around for a sufficient time and should know the requirements of the law. They are responsible, and secondly, they are responsible. You look again at the administrative code. Liability for violations by a political committee or a political party are imposed jointly on the committee and party and the responsible treasurer. They are the ones that are accountable, and they have not said a single word about what happened in this case. We need more facts. What I'm arguing for is, if you find a violation, but let's move forward. Let's have a hearing, a full evidentiary hearing. Give us some opportunity for discovery to get a full factual record. So the commission, one, can make an informed decision of all the nature and circumstances of the violation, and two, so the public knows the nature and circumstances of the violation. It's interesting, they point to the only thing that's been offered, and it's always weird, you guys allow evidence at this stage of the proceedings, is the affidavit, is the affidavit of Eddie Davenport. But that actually raises certain questions that are still unanswered in terms of the nature and circumstances of what occurred here. You go back to previous campaign filings of the Hamilton County Democratic Party, and you can see, let me find it. That they have in the past accepted contributions from political action committees. I'm calling up on the screen right now their pre-general 2019 campaign finance report. On one page, Plumbers and Pipe Fitters PAC, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky Apartment PAC, and again, another contribution from a PAC. So there really was never any question about whether a PAC could contribute to a political party. It could, and has, and the Democratic Party knew that and regularly accepted contributions. But now Mr. Davenport says, in paragraph 4 of his affidavit, prior to accepting the contributions, the Democratic Party did its due diligence to verify whether accepting the contribution was legal. Now, okay, this is a ballot issue PAC, but here's the first question that's unanswered. What even triggered that question? Somebody or someone's told Mr. Davenport a ballot issue PAC cannot accept cannot contribute to a political party. What triggered the inquiry by Mr. Davenport? We don't know. Why? Because you have a self-serving affidavit where they tell you whatever facts they want you to know and don't tell you the facts they want to keep hidden from you and from the public. So, did Mr. McLendon tell him ballot issues can't contribute? We don't know. We need facts before this commission to make a fully informed decision and not to just quickly slough it off and hide all the facts from the public. But it's also interesting, if you look, prior to accepting the contribution, he makes this inquiry. He doesn't call Mr. Richter, the executive director and general counsel for the commission. He goes to what's characterized as a Democrat campaign finance specialist, a non-attorney at the Board of Elections, to get legal advice. Now, I will tell you, boards of elections, the directors, they insist they do not provide legal advice. They can point you to statutes, they can say, look at this, look at that, but they do not provide legal advice. But he found somebody there who said, oh, I'm going to give you the answer you want. Yeah, it's okay. Actually, it's a legally incorrect answer because there is no contribution. There is no contribution limit on the PAC contributing to a party. But be that as it may, it's interesting, though, prior to accepting the contributions, he made his due diligence by inquiring of the Board of Elections. Interesting, that inquiry occurred in early to mid-February of 2020. Mid to early February, he's quite, can I take this contribution from a ballot issue PAC? But if you look, let me find it. The contribution itself, the first contribution from the Move Forward PAC to the Hamilton County Democratic Party occurred on March 13th, 2020. Here's the check, the $5,000 check. March 13th, 1 month after Mr. Davenport says, I'm making this inquiry. And that's important. Why? Because it shows a coordination, a collusion of some nature between the Move Forward PAC and the Hamilton County Democratic Party to make this illegal contribution. It wasn't that the check showed up in the mail and Mr. Davenport says, hey, I got this contribution from this PAC. Can we do it? No. There was communication. There was coordination. That needs to be fleshed out. That is part of the nature and circumstances of the violation that occurred. But because all we got right now is a self-serving affidavit giving you only the facts they want you to know, you don't know, and the public does not know the whole nature of what arose. Who was it? How did it occur? That goes to what's important. That goes to the nature and circumstances of the violation. One of the factors under the administrative code that the commission has to consider or should consider in determining what fine to impose or whether to oppose. That goes to good cause or not. That is where we're at. It is so premature. They want to rush this in. Okay, if we did violate, give us our slap on the wrist. You know, again, these are not political novices involved. They're sophisticated people. They've been involved in politics, a party chairman, a long-term treasurer, the Secretary of State clearly pronouncing the illegality of this contribution. You know, and I was final thing, I'm going to wrap up here. You know, find the violation, but let us go forward in terms of the evidence to give you the facts and circumstances, to give you and to give the public that. The final thing I would just say, I know Mr. Richter recommended good cause. I don't think there is good cause right now for the Democratic Party not to be imposed a fine. And he argued for a $100 fine against the Move Forward PAC. With all due respect, that is a slap on the wrist. That is an insult to the law that was violated. Because remember, this didn't come out because, hey, they were auditing their books and they recognized this, oh, we shouldn't have accepted this contribution. This occurred for one reason and one reason only. Mr. Miller stood up, caught it, called it, and called him out on it. If this complaint had not been filed, those funds would still be used for the operation of the Hamilton County Democrat Party in violation of the law. Final thing I just want to say in that regard, I'll go back to, you know, Move Forward PAC. When I saw Mr. Richter yesterday was recommending a $100 fine. I went to the Board of Elections. From late 2019 to today, the Move Forward PAC received contributions in excess of $1.86 million. $1.86 million. A $100 fine is 0.05%. 0.05%. That is if this commission would impose that trivial fine, and it is trivial, especially when you're looking at those numbers. It would be a slap on the wrist. It would do nothing to dissuade this from happening in the future. It's just the cost of doing business. When you have a $1.86 million budget, $100, even a $5,000 fine is a cost of doing business, is a cost of the risk of getting caught. Because again, if you don't get caught, there's no fine. Let me compare it to another case that I was involved several years ago with the commission. It's the Cincinnatians for Jobs Now, case 2014 G001. It dealt with an unregistered political action committee. Labor unions had put in about $300,000 to a PAC. They tried to claim, oh, it wasn't 2 or more people, it was just this one person operating, et cetera. Eventually, they admitted, yeah, we're a pack, but just give us our slap on the wrist and we'll go on another day. And if I'm not mistaken, if memory serves me, and Mr. Richter could correct me on this, there was kind of a recommendation, maybe $100, $500, or $1,000 fine. But at the time, Commissioner Grimshaw out of Scioto County raised the issue. What message are you sending? Are you really going to try to prevent this type of information? And at the end of the day, his argument won the day, and the commission imposed a $15,000 fine in that case. 5% of the total funds that involved. That was significant. That sent the message. When you look at what numbers are being talked about, and I think under the statute, you're capped at $5,000 per violation. We got 3 violations admitted. So you're probably capped at $15,000. But even so, 0.8%. Commission in the 2014 case that actually in July of 2016 imposed the $15,000 fine, which was 5%. I would argue 0.8% of the total contributions. It's still, it sends a message, sends the right message, and that would be appropriate, not a slap on the wrist of 0.05% of a fine. But again, at the end of the day, we move back to the final or initial argument. What are all the facts and circumstances giving rise to the violation? It's not before the commission. We need a full evidentiary record developed for that issue. So I would ask the commission either find a violation and continue it for a hearing on the penalty phase, or simply continue it for a hearing on the merits and penalty phase jointly. Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Are there any questions from commission members to Council Hartman at this time? Hearing none.
I will interject quickly, just as a point of clarification. Mr. Hartman talked about finding a violation, setting it for hearing. He kind of clarified there toward the end. The commission can either set the matter for hearing or find a violation or find no violation. If it sets the matter for hearing, then the hearing would be held at a later date. The one thing he did say toward the end there was potentially find a violation and then subsequently hear evidence, presumably on the amount of a fine. That's certainly doable as well if the commission wants to do that. I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear that if we find a violation has been found, and we can't necessarily set a hearing for a full evidentiary hearing. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Camaras?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here today on behalf of the Move Forward PAC and its treasurer, and I want to point out that it was a misstatement by opposing counsel to suggest that no one has heard from the treasurers, because both my letter to each of you and I believe Mr. McTighe's correspondence was on behalf of the PAC and the treasurer. I will tell the commission that I view my role as an attorney not to bang the table and make a one-sided argument of this is a simple, easy, black and white issue, but to instead come before you with the candor that this is a complex matter with lots of shades of gray, and that not try to sell you all on a full-throated argument of anything, because this is really a matter of first impression before the committee as far as I'm aware. And really there is not certainty to this. The statute says corporate funds cannot be indirectly contributed. Mr. Hartman, both in the complaint and in his argument, relies on a manual from the Secretary of State with one interpretation of that. The Secretary of State does not have the authority to make the law. That the manual that's published by the Secretary of State is not the law. The law says corporate contributions cannot be indirectly given. And frankly, I think really this is a question of interpretation as to whether or not that happened. The record is undeniably clear that my client received funds both from corporations and from individuals. It certainly received funds from individuals much in excess of the contributions that it made to the Hamilton County Democratic Party. So I think whether or not the funds that were contributed to the Hamilton County Democratic Party, whether those were in corporate funds indirectly given, is is a question of interpretation that smart lawyers can and will argue both sides of that before you. I don't think there's any real certainty there. And that's why you'll see in our letter and again here today in my answer to you all that it is my client's belief that they did not indirectly give corporate funds to the Hamilton County Democratic Party. But if indeed your interpretation is that, and I know this is Mr. Richter's interpretation, and I have deep respect and admiration for Mr. Richter's knowledge of campaign finance law, and his interpretation is that once corporate funds are received by a PAC, if they then make any kind of contribution, that's an indirect use of corporate funds. So I respect that, and I think Mr. Richter understands my side of the argument too. But nonetheless, this is certainly a question, a gray area. There's no bang a table with indignity and say clearly there was any type of conspiracy. I frankly found the argument from Mr. Hartman offensive that there was some type of collusion or conspiracy between these parties. For someone to make a contribution to someone else, there generally has to be kind of two parties involved to that. Someone has to make a contribution, someone has to receive a contribution. To suggest that there was a conspiracy because some research was done beforehand is, I think, frankly absurd. But nonetheless, the PAC and its treasurer, my clients, understand that there's a gray area that exists here. It's a case of first impression. If indeed the commission feels that it violated it, we understand that as a reasonable interpretation. And my client would argue that we feel that this complaint should be dismissed, but also we wish to inform the commission that if you feel that a violation did occur by these facts, a couple of things that we hope you will consider. One, I think to my client, since this complaint was filed and since it became aware of this potential issue, has done everything in its power to be as cooperative as it can and to resolve this matter. The Hamilton County Democratic Party made a contribution of those funds in a similar, an identical amount to my client. My client has filed the filings, even though I still don't believe they were required to be filed in order to be fully transparent, to get all of the matters out in fact today so that the commission could respond to that. We certainly join the argument that Mr. McTighe made in his motion and that I imagine he will make as soon as I conclude that this matter should be dismissed. But if the commission feels that a violation occurred, my client understands it certainly was not made with any bad intent. Every corrective measure that's possible has been taken since then, and we would accept Mr. Richter's recommendation. The last thing that I'll add, I certainly want to be respectful of the commission's time here, is that I think the commission's job is to make sure that the law is followed and that things become public if they're not. Certainly, as Mr. Hartman said, we're here today. This matter has received media attention and Cincinnati Enquirer. Certainly, transparency has been achieved. To the extent any type of violation occurred, all the steps have been taken to unwind that violation. Certainly, a cause finding would be a matter of public nature, and a $100 fine, as Mr. Richter suggested, would be public. So that's all certainly, I think, achieves exactly what the commission's goal is to do. I think a couple of the things requested by the complainant, one, Mr. Hartman's argument that the commission should analyze percentages of budgets over a series of years of operation is not at all based in any statutory code or administrative code that I'm aware of. Additionally, I think the complaint asks that he should get to pick, or his client should get to pick, a charity that money should be donated to, which I don't believe is part of statute or law as well. So as a matter of moving forward, my client's prepared to accept, if the commission finds it was responsible, and would accept Mr. Richter's recommendation of a $100 fine. As I mentioned to you all in my letter, my client is winding down its affairs and intends to complete its operations as soon as this matter is resolved. And this is the first time it's ever been before you for any type of violation. It certainly has no history. So for all of those reasons, we think a good cause, if there is a violation finding, is the correct decision, but we also would accept the $100 fine from Mr. Richter and prepare to wind down and close operations.
Sorry. Thank you. Commission members, any questions? For Mr. Cameras? Hearing none, thank you. Mr. McTighe?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I'm Don McTighe on behalf of the Hamilton County Democratic Party and its treasurer, Mr. McClendon. I'll try not to repeat too much of what Mr. Cameras said. What we've heard is a very loud table banging argument from, Mr. Hartman for his pound of flesh that he wants related, and that all relates to what the size of the fine should be. But there's a basic fallacy here with regard to his seeking his pound of flesh. And the fallacy is this: he stated that it is a long established prohibition in Ohio law that ballot issue PACs cannot contribute to political parties. This is indeed a case of first impression. I've been before the commission for several decades. I was former staff counsel to the commission when it was an arm of the Secretary of State's office. I cannot recall any previous case involving a ballot issue committee making a donation to a political party or a candidate. And so I think what we have to consider is that this is a case of first impression. Mr. Hartman, he says that the Secretary of State has promulgated rules about this, but in fact, the Secretary of State has not promulgated any rule. There's nothing in any statute or in any rule or regulation. There is a one sentence in the Secretary of State's campaign finance handbook, which is not cross-referenced to any statute or to any regulation. And in fact, if you were to search the campaign finance code from end to end and search it 10 times, you will not find anything in the law that states that a ballot issue committee may not make a contribution to a political party. In fact, you will not even find the term ballot issue PAC or ballot issue committee in the campaign finance law. This is a term of art. And I think that over the years, people have developed kind of this sense that ballot issue committees cannot contribute to candidates or political parties. But again, that is not actually written down in the law. So what is in the law? Okay, if you go through it, you're going to see that, again, there is no actual definition of the term ballot issue PAC or ballot issue committee. But what you have is Ohio tries to deal with what we are calling a ballot issue committee through the application of contribution limits on contributions to PACs. So what it says is that there are limits on what individuals and other entities can contribute to a political action committee. It then contains a provision that exempts from the limits on contributions to a PAC those PACs that do not make contributions to candidates or political parties. Okay, so and that support only ballot issues. Okay, so that's kind of where the concept comes from, I suppose, even though it's ballot issue committee is not technically defined anywhere. And there is no actual prohibition on a political action committee, whether it be a ballot issue committee or a non-ballot issue committee, making contributions. And what we have, though, is the statute that is the actual premise of Mr. Miller's complaint here. And that is the prohibition on corporations using their funds to directly or indirectly make a contribution to a political party. I would argue, and I think I've talked to Mr. Richter, I think he and I disagree on this, on the manner of interpretation of this statutory provision. And it really comes down to the word indirect, because obviously we don't have any corporation that wrote a check to the Hamilton County Democratic Party. Corporations wrote checks to the ballot issue committee, and then later the ballot issue committee makes a couple contributions to the Hamilton County Democratic Party. But the question becomes, I think, under the statute. Again, the statute is violated by the corporation. Corporation shall not use its funds, property or funds, directly or indirectly in support of a political party. So the issue becomes, is there a violation of that statute? Has a corporation used its funds directly or indirectly in support of the political party? I believe that requires some sort of participation by the corporation or authorization by the corporation. Once the corporation makes a contribution to another committee, it doesn't control with what happens from there. I know in speaking with Mr. Richter, I think there's a concern about opening a door here for indirect contributions. I would respectfully submit that I think that's a legitimate, I think, concern, but it is a legislative issue. The commission has to take the law as written that has been asked to enforce. And if there is a gap in the law, then it should be addressed legislatively. The commission doesn't make policy decisions that are not clearly authorized by the law that were enacted by the General Assembly. And so we believe that our motion to dismiss is well taken, that there is not an actual violation of the law. And second, if you were to disagree and say that there is a violation, then you get to, what should the penalty be? I would respectfully request that you follow Mr. Richter's recommendation with regard to the Hamilton County Democratic Party and find good cause not to impose a fine. And primarily because of what I've argued, that this is a case of first impression. You can't really point to anything in the law that explicitly prohibits a ballot issue committee from making a donation to a political party. And in addition, the other, I suppose, mitigating factor is that the county party has made a donation back to the political action committee in the same amount of the contributions that it had received. So for all of these reasons, again, I would request, first of all, that you dismiss the complaint based on the current state of the law. And second, if you don't, that you find good cause not to impose a fine with regard to the county party. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McTighe. Questions from board and commission members? Anyone? Okay, I have a couple of questions. I'm again deferring to anybody on the commission to go ahead of me if you like. All right, here you
go. Go ahead, Catherine. I have some questions for Phil, but go ahead for you if you have questions for council.
I do have questions for council. I'm going to start with council for the respondents, either one of you, I don't care who answers. So the issue in this case is that you have a committee that was formed to support a ballot issue that received corporate contributions, and then those, along with individual contributions, and those contributions were then made by the PAC to a political party, correct? That's our issue, right? And the issue is that the corporations themselves could not have contributed to those political parties, correct? I see nods.
Well,
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I think once according to Mr. McTighe, the corporation, I mean, the person that should be held accountable is the corporation, not the PAC, because it's indirect corporation contributions. So once they give it to the PAC, they're absolved of anything. Is that right, Mr. McTighe? I mean, that's your argument.
Yes.
Once they give it to the PAC, they don't control it. It's out of their control. If the PAC contributes it as an indirect corporate contribution, no scienter, no big deal, not their problem, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. But somehow, and the PAC has certain exemptions, a ballot issue PAC has certain exemptions on contributions limits, which is why once the money comes in and it gets intermingled, at least according to Mr. Richter's analysis, once the money gets into the pool and it gets intermingled, none of that money could ever be used for as an indirect corporate contribution to anything, because that would violate the statute that prohibits that and prohibits what a ballot committee can do, right? Is that a fair analysis? Mr. Richter, Mr. McTighe, Mr. Cameras, all of you? Is that what you're telling me?
I haven't seen the written analysis. I just had a conversation with Mr. Richter. I don't remember that point being raised about the commingling of money, but so I don't know really if I can address that.
Mr. Richter?
I will. Here is the. I have been asked this question probably repeatedly over my time sitting in the position in which I have sat. And what I will tell someone who is with a ballot issue PAC, term of art, is that, that first dollar of corporate money that they take essentially spoils the pot. And that from that pot, they cannot make any type of candidate contribution because that pot has been spoiled. The only way they could ever make a contribution, theoretically, to me, is if they spent all of their money, got to zero, so that you would have evidence of them flushing out all the funds, and then take back in contributions, and there are no corporate contributions, in that second set of funds coming in, then they could. That's not the case here, and generally speaking, that's not the case. But that has always been my understanding of the law and my understanding of the application of the law to ballot issue PACs.
Okay, so once the money being water comes in, it's intermingled, and there is no separation unless you get rid of all the water, and you would have to strictly account for a ballot issue PAC could make a political contribution if the ballot issue PAC had strict accounting that showed every dime that came in came from an individual and none of it came from a corporate source. So that's what you're telling me, Mr. Richter?
Correct.
Okay, Ms. Kaufman, I'm sorry, go ahead. Or was it Ms. Tavares?
Yeah, this was Ms. Tavares.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Ms. Cunningham, my question goes to that point with Mr. Richter. If the ballot PAC had kept two separate accounts and kept all the corporate dollars in one account and the individual and otherwise legal dollars to go into campaigns and or a political party, would that satisfy the separation of those corporate dollars versus the non-corporate dollars?
I'm hesitant to say yes, only because technically a PAC is supposed to have one account for the funds that it brings in. I mean, I think, you know, is it theoretically possible to do what you're talking about? Yes. I don't know that there are that many PACs that have multiple accounts. And generally speaking, and we have seen this kind of, actually, I think we just dealt with two PACs out of the Cleveland area back in December, I think it was, where it was like the Cleveland comes first. I don't know. I'm paraphrasing. This isn't exact, but it's like the Cleveland comes first candidate campaign and the Cleveland comes first ballot issue campaign, something along those lines, where you will have two separate and distinct PACs, one of which takes in the corporate funds, one of which takes in candidate able funds, and it goes from there. Theoretically, like I said, I guess it's possible for what you just asked, Ms. Taveras, but generally speaking, that is not the manner in which most PACs operate. They have one account. It would appear that's the case here.
If the General Assembly wanted to have clear and distinct dollars accounted for, they would have to pass a law that said you must maintain two separate accounts if you are in fact going to make contributions to campaigns and or political parties.
That is certainly
that would take a law in order to make that.
That is certainly one approach that could be taken, yes.
Other commission members, questions?
Phil, is this just kind of like what we would think about the classic, it's a shell game? You put the little nut under the shell and then you move it over and slide it over to a different account?
It certainly could be if you had multiple accounts for a particular PAC, yes. Which is why, again, you know, when I get these types of questions, I will normally admonish whoever it is that's asking the question, you know, to be mindful of the fact that a ballot issue PAC cannot make contributions to candidates or any type of organization that is going to give to a candidate, i.e. a Democratic or Republican Party account, Libertarian Party account for that matter. Don't want to leave anybody out. And so it's certainly something always to be mindful of.
Well, in my impression, it seems to me that this is a bit of political gamesmanship. We're not talking about someone who's never been involved in a stay-at-home mom who hasn't had a job for 2 years. You're talking about people who are well-versed in the world, and it seems like a very easy way to transfer funds from one group to another without any transparency.
It is certainly possible if someone is not it isn't necessarily aware of the, what the nature of the PAC is, how the contribution came in, et cetera. And, as a part of the audit process, presumably, when a campaign finance account, whether it's a PAC candidate, et cetera, is audited by the responsible party at the Board of Elections in this case, or the Secretary of State, wherever the case may be, they would presumably know and identify, what is a proper PAC to give to a candidate-related account.
Well, I have difficulty if this is truly a case of first impression, and I trust that you've been doing this a lot longer than I have, as has Mr. McTighe. But if this is truly a case of first impression, I have a difficult time saying we're just going to go ahead and find a violation, slap their hands with a fine until we really know further information and all the true details. I have difficulty with that.
And I understand your position and respect that. As I will often say, I don't think I'm punting here, but when I make my recommendations, it's made based on the materials presented to me that I receive in advance of any kind of presentation like this. I make my recommendation. you know, in this particular case, I don't know that I'm going away from it. I respect what Mr. Hartman has had to say. I certainly respect what Mr. McTighe has had to say and what Mr. Cameron has had to say. You know, it's the commission's now determination as to how they want to proceed, and I respect what you are saying, Mr. Norman.
Other commissioners, any questions, comments, discussion?
Yeah, I have a few, and I think most are directed at Phil. There's been, from both sides, discussions that it's a violation of Ohio campaign finance law, the instant case that arose. And then we had from Mr. McTighe saying that the only thing they can point to is the Ohio Campaign Finance Handbook, and that there is nothing specifically in the Ohio Campaign Finance law. Is that true? I mean, is that how you interpret this, Phil?
I respect what has been said there. What I always rely on is Revised Code Section 359903, which prohibits corporate activity. And whether you want to bring in A1, B1, or any of those provisions that place specific prohibitions on corporations from making direct contributions to candidates or any kind of candidate-related group, whether it's a PAC, a party, or what have you. To me, I read those sections together, 359903A and B, to be clear that there is a prohibition out there. That's the manner in which I proceed whenever I address questions about this. I you know, just as a sidebar, I would agree with Mr. McTighe. You know, I mean, he obviously covered a period of time before I was with the commission, and in all my years with the commission, we have certainly had, you know, improper corporate contribution cases before the commission, but this is a case of first impression of this type of activity being brought to the commission for consideration.
Well, I guess my next question to you then would be, if we find a violation in this matter, are we in fact substituting the commission's judgment for that of the legislature?
Certainly, that's Mr. McTighe's argument. When you read through his motion to dismiss, I would say no, because I would apply 359903A and B together, particularly the B portion, I think, which says any entity, you know, that participates. Certainly, I agree with, there is an element in there of a knowing element in 359903B. That certainly, maybe I am stretching an interpretation by the commission, but I feel like the efforts undertaken would give an idea that there was at least an understanding that it was improper to do that. And that probably goes into a part of my recommendation, yes.
All right, then finally, my last question to you. You've already explained, and I think Catherine's talked about it previously, and that is that as far as the PAC, they transferred commingled funds to the Hamilton County Democratic Party. I think you've established that that the funds were commingled. And my last question is there any evidence before this commission that the money that was transferred was used to support or oppose any candidate by the Hamilton County Democratic Party?
Well, I would say that wasn't specifically included, but considering, you know, again, you go back to commingling funds in terms of, you know, contributions were received. I think it was, I'm not looking at it again, April, May, June timeframe, money comes into the party, and the party then is making expenditures on behalf of its candidates throughout the period of time after that. And again, you can't really separate and say, oh, well, we kept, you know, once that money gets dumped into an account, it's all there, and it's all a part of the same fund. And it's just like adding, red dye to water. You can't dip your ladle in and pull out some water that's not red after the money's been, or after the dye's been put in there. So I think once that money is in there, I think there's at least an understanding that expenditures were made on behalf of candidates for the Democratic Party throughout the period of time after the money was received.
Commissioner Cunningham, would like to be heard on that point too. Kurt Hartman here.
Yeah, just a minute. Any member have additional questions for Mr. Richter on this issue?
Madam Chair, not on that issue specifically. I want to get to the fine. So if you want to go on this issue.
Mr. Hartman, specifically to Phil's issue, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just, well, in terms of the funds in the Democratic Party being used to support candidates, I would refer to paragraph 8 of the complaint, which identifies that this is the campaign fund of the Democratic Party. It's not the operational fund where they're doing it for rent or whatever of the headquarters. So this is their campaign fund, which is by its very nature used to support candidates. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tavares, go ahead.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'm going to the discussion around the fine that Mr. Hartman raised. As I look at the Ohio Revised Code, and I think it's 3517 B3A, imposed fine of not less than $100 nor more than $5,000 for an improper corporate contribution. And I guess the argument that was made by the plaintiff is that, this is a drop in the bucket based on their balance in their campaign account. Mr. Richter, my question is, do we ever base our fines on how much a campaign account has, or our interest in making more of a statement than not? Or do we go based on, has there been previous violations? If so, how many and within what time frame?
Yes. And I say it that way only because in this particular case, certainly I looked at the relative novelty of the allegations here and the fact that the Move Forward PAC had not been before the commission previously. As elements going into the recommendation that I made here. As it relates to the other part of your question, though, where have we ever used the amount, let's say, as a guide for imposing a fine, making a statement? Mr. Hartman pointed out the one case, in particular that he was involved with. Mr. McTighe was involved with that case as well. And in the past, the commission has, when been presented with circumstances, said, okay, we're going to impose this amount of fine because that's amount that may have been improperly used or, was improperly accounted for, or because we believe that the severity of the circumstances was such that it merited a fine, of let's say a greater amount. So, I was a bit trite in just kind of saying yes, but we have in the past made those kinds of statements, as it were, when presented with a situation that merited that kind of a fine. I hope that answers the question.
I think we have one pending before us. We're waiting to hear that. I think that was one of the considerations where the candidate was using his own fund for his own personal use repeatedly and repeatedly.
And that's coming up in a couple of weeks.
And as I recall, just to add to that, as I recall, one of the things that has affected us when we have considered similar cases is whether the money has been unwound, repaid, actually benefited, or whether it's been paid back and those kinds of things too. Because I do recall vaguely occasions where there was no getting the money back or there was no unwinding what had happened. The money was just gone. And in those cases, there were sometimes fines in the amount of the money that should not have been contributed in the first place. But I think that unwinding is one factor that we have considered in the past when we're thinking about how those fines work. And Phil, please chime in on that.
No, I think that's exactly correct. Yes, we have. Again, there's a whole series of elements that go into, let's say a particular finding and the amount of the fine, et cetera. That, you have stated, I think, one of them, yes. Novelty of the case, as I kind of said, first impression, et cetera, how many times these groups, PACs, whatever the case, has been before the commission. There's that whole laundry list that I try to take into consideration as I make my recommendation that, are there for the commission to consider.
Madam Chair, may I speak to Commissioner Taveras' question to clarify one item as well?
Certainly.
I just wanted to point out, I believe the comment that Mr. Hartman made about my client having raised $1.86 million. I just want to make sure that's not mistaken, as my client currently has $1.86 million. Frankly, if you all were to impose the maximum fine and do as Mr. Hartman asked of the complaint and let him pick charities for money to go to and all those types of things, my client would have to go fundraise to actually pay that bill. As I mentioned to you all, they are winding down the affairs. This is kind of the last matter to be resolved before they'll be winding down. So I just wanted to make sure it's understood that there's not $1.86 million sitting in a bank account at the moment.
Madam Commissioner, I agree with that. I think my comment was they raised over 1.86 million during the past year plus. And I think that's part of the nature and circumstances and some of the facts we have, some of the facts we don't have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments for any of the parties, the executive director, by commission members?
I just have a comment in general. I'm concerned that this is a case of first impression, and we're not fully delving into everything we need to by allowing this to go forward with just a violation, good cause, of $100. If this is going to set precedent, and the problem I have with it is it's a political party, people who are well experienced in political law, and we're letting this thing basically get swept under the rug. So my thinking is I'd rather set it for hearing. Let's hear the whole thing, and then let's have a whole commission. Let's make an educated and intelligent decision.
Ms. Cunningham, this is Don McTighe. If I could address that and also the what Ms. Taveras was raising.
Okay, Mr. McTighe, I'll let you address. Can you hold on a minute? Let's get the comments of all commissioners first. Thanks. Any other commissioners with comments or questions?
This is Commissioner Kaufman, and I am with Commissioner Norman. It's I guess it seems like we're throwing first impression around, as in this is the first time, and so we don't really know. But I feel like there is we can't negate the fact that it's serious just because it's first impression. I feel like it deserves to be delved into, and I feel like it really needs some research and our due diligence as the commission. So.
Okay. Any other commission members?
Yeah, Commissioner Brommer, I would only say that as far as a case of first impression, I think we are saying that a violation occurred. I think what we're struggling with is the amount of fine, it appears to me. So if we end up deciding that a violation occurred, then I think that takes care of the issue of establishing a non-violation precedent. So I'm just wondering if equity would be best served to find those violations and impose fines.
Any other commission members?
I guess the difficulty I have with that, Dennis, and I think we're all going to think there was a violation, but I think I would like more evidence as it relates to how these funds were actually transmitted, the knowledge that some people may have had, because if we just say, okay, it's a violation and we're going to give them a fine, it seems to be an opening of the door for political parties and for PACs to be doing this exact same thing, knowing if it happens, nothing much is really going to happen. And that's the concern I have.
Any other comments of commission members? Okay, Mr. McTighe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, I think everybody is on the same page that this is a case of first impression. Setting the matter for a hearing doesn't get us any further in answering the case of first impression question, which is a straight legal question. And so I think that in terms of quote, sending a message, right, to political entities, the message isn't about the size of the fine. The message that needs to be sent is what is the law? And as an election lawyer, that's the message I would like to receive, because I want to know what is the law. And having a hearing isn't going to get us any further in answering that question of what is the law. So that's the message that needs to be, I think, quote, sent by the commission, is what is the law? Thank you.
Commissioner Cunningham, briefly.
Yes.
Here.
Yes.
Just on that question, first thing, case of first impression, if everybody follows the law because it is the law and the first person violates it, yeah, it becomes a case of first impression, but everybody's been doing the right thing previously. The second thing I would say is, even if, this is a case of first impression, as Ms. McTighe said, maybe there's a question of the law, it's ultimately could be for the courts to decide, be it Franklin County Common Pleas or 10th District. And I think in that case, it would be prudent for as full of an evidentiary record to be developed. So if an appeal is taken from the commission's ruling, there is a full record that has been developed at the administrative hearing stage that the courts can consider. Thank you.
Can I then also, since the other two parties got to make
Absolutely. You were
Thank
next on
you.
my list. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just think it's important to understand. I think all of the facts the commission needs to make a decision respectfully are in evidence. There's no denial that 3 contributions that were made. There's no denial that the money has been returned. Everyone seems to agree on that. Both the Hamilton County Democratic Party and the Move Forward PAC have publicly, transparently filed all of their spending. Frankly, we're here today because of how transparent my client and the Hamilton County Democratic Party were, in which Mr. Hartman and his client were able to identify that and to file a complaint. So I think all of the facts of what exactly occurred took place. I think Mr. Richter's recommendation of how to resolve this is exactly in line with the way in which you all have approached many previous issues that have been handled similarly. And I just conclude by saying, I think, as I've mentioned, my client is prepared to resolve this matter and to wind down its affairs. So we would request you accept Mr. Richter's recommendation because you have all of the facts.
Okay, understood. I'm going to, unless there's objection, I'm going to close the hearing and limit any additional discussion to that of the commission. And Mr. Richter, if there is any, or the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Richter, if we go forward and just make at this stage a determination of finding a violation, we as a commission have done, I guess, our duty in saying that they violated the law as we're interpreting it, correct?
Correct.
And I guess I'm inclined to, as I'm thinking about it, I'm inclined to say, let's move forward and find a violation. And that would be my interpretation of my impression. But I disagree with a good cause finding, and I disagree with a finding of $100 fine only because I'm concerned about, again, who is involved with these things taking place, as opposed to a novice who doesn't know any better, but you're talking about politicos who are aware or have the resources to be aware of what Ohio law is as it relates to campaign finance. And so I think my position, and I would like to hear from everybody else on the commission, would be find the violation and then set this over for a hearing as it relates to adjudication on a fine on behalf of both parties.
I hear what you're saying. The only admonition that I would put out there is the commission has an ability to make a finding, as you are recommending, and then issuing some sort of a final resolution 30 days from the date of the finding. And so we would have to do that presumably within 30 days of today's date, I guess, maybe unless the parties were willing to proceed further. That would limit us, not that I have a specific problem with it, to readdressing, let's say, the penalty phase at the commission's meeting on March 11th, because 30 days, that's the only other meeting we have here in the intervening period. I don't have a problem with that if that's what you want to do. I am merely pointing out the practical circumstances of moving forward as you just indicated, Mr. Norman.
And when you say the practical circumstances, that just means the parties need to make sure they're prepared to present what they intend to prepare as it relates to an adjudication of a fine.
Yes, that presumably would be on March 11th. We, then make and then either, say, okay, thank you very much. We've made the finding of violation. You've now made your case. Here's the imposition of a penalty for that. Or, we would then have about another week in order to finalize, let's say, a written finding, if that's what the commission wanted to do. Sounding a little bit more complex than maybe I am intending it, but I just want to make sure that that's clear, that based on the commission's statutory scheme, that's the time frame that we would be placing before ourselves.
Okay.
Other commissioners? Discussions?
Well, I'm opposed to extending this beyond today's hearing for either determination of additional facts or for determining how much the fine should be. I think we have the facts before us today. I think we need to make a decision on the merits as to whether there was guilt or not. And if we find there is, then I think we should impose penalties. Now, Commissioner Tavares mentioned something about a $5,000 penalty. Phil, I don't know what you've recommended for the PAC fine. You had said good cause for the PAC or for the county, but what did you say for the PAC fine?
$100. $100 is what I recommended for the fine against the Move Forward PAC.
And you indicated good cause for the county.
Correct.
Well, I'm in opposition to finding good cause. I think violations did in fact occur, and I agree with the theory that people who should have been in the know should have known better. We've said a number of times that these are not mom and pops running their first campaigns. These are veterans running a campaign organization. So my preference would be, as I stated previously, to find violations in both cases and impose realistic fines. And I'm not talking about 5 or 10%, but fines more than good cause and $100.
Dennis, do you have any guidance on what you're thinking to the other commissioners?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Tavares. I just wanted to clarify, I didn't recommend $5,000. I was just saying as little as $100, and then the maximum was $5,000.
Were you just quoting the statute?
Commissioner Tavares, I didn't mean to imply that you recommended 5,000. I just indicated there's a range there, somewhere between good cause and $5,000. And that I think we should be able to find an appropriate penalty that could be instituted here. So as far as having any recommendations, I'm listening to the fact that the PAC is out of money. How much fine are we going to assess to them and realistically expect to have it paid? So I would say my recommendation to the PAC would be $500 and $2,500 to the county.
Just so we're clear, the range is not between 0 and 5,000. It's actually 0 and 15,000 because there were 3 violations.
Okay.
Right.
I still stand by my recommendation.
Any comments, Commissioner Kaufman, if you have any? Okay.
No. Thank you.
Okay, hearing none. Is there any other discussion among commission members or questions for the executive director? Any other information from the executive director to commission members before I call for the question?
Not.
I guess I have a, is that Phil's going? Go ahead, Phil.
No, I was just, I don't have anything else at this point. I think you all have spoken well and addressed your respective positions well. And so, go ahead, Scott.
Well, I think if we're looking at instituting a fine, I think they're equally culpable. And so I think if we're going to issue the PAC, and I haven't heard that the PAC is insolvent, they're just winding up their affairs and they don't have a lot of money. But it seems to me if you're going to fine the party $2,500, you should fine the PAC $2,500.
Any further discussions, questions, anything from commission members? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion either relating only to the violation or to both the violation and penalty, depending on how a commissioner would intend to proceed.
This is Commissioner Norman. I'm going to move that we find a violation as to both the party and as to the PAC, and that we institute a fine of $2,500 to each party in their prosecution.
I'm sorry, and what about prosecution? You cut out.
In lieu of further prosecution.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? I'm going to call again. Is there a second to that motion?
Second, Kaufman.
It has been moved by Commissioner Norman, seconded by Commissioner Kaufman, that the commission find a violation and impose a fine to both the party and the PAC of $2,500 each, sorry, and that the matter not be referred for further prosecution. Any discussion on the motion by commission members? Okay. Hearing none. Mr. Richter, would you please call the roll?
I will gladly do so. Just want to make one more statement that is in order for this motion to pass, it will take 4 positive votes. Mr. Bromer.
Yes.
Ms. Tavares.
I'm struggling. I guess I'll go with yes.
Ms. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Norman.
Yes.
Chair, preliminary review, current chair Cunningham.
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0. The matter is resolved.
Thank you to the parties for your participation today and the arguments. They were well made, and the commission appreciates your attendance and all of the filings and attention to this matter.
Great. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. And Commissioner Kreitz, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Catherine. All right, we want to move on to reconsiderations, Phil.
Yeah, well, why don't we, I know Mr. West is still online. Let's go to item number 12, 2020G-022, in which the commission has received a mutual dismissal submitted by both the Ohio Republican Party and the Ohio Democratic Party.
Are you guys getting feedback or is it just me?
I'm sorry?
Are you guys getting feedback or is it just me?
No,
I'm getting feedback too.
I'm getting feedback and I'm not sure where it's coming from. Yeah. Okay.
It just stopped. Thank you.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Phil.
But I would recommend to the commission that we go to there first. That'll allow, even though we're only going to be around for more minutes, Mr. West, and I think Ms. Maines is Mr. Schlegel maybe even on as well. But if we would just go ahead and accept that joint request for dismissal of 2020G-022.
And Phil, we need to go ahead and do that accept that by motion.
That is correct. That would need to be acted upon by the commission.
Okay, with respect to case 2020G-022, Ohio Republican Party versus Ohio Democratic Party, the parties have submitted a joint request for dismissal. Is there a motion to accept the joint request for dismissal?
So moved. Tavares.
Second,
All right.
Norman.
All right, any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye or raising your right hand.
Aye.
Okay, that concludes that matter. Thank you very much.
Thanks
Then
for
we
hanging
wanna-
in there, Zach.
Then we want to move back to case 2019 R-439, 2019 R-498, Roy J. Jack et al. The executive director has recommended reconsider the consolidated cases, vacate the previous imposition of the per diem fine, and instead impose a fine of $150. Mr. Richter?
Yeah, this was a matter which was, again, it had been continued a couple of times before the commission acted on it at the January 28th meeting. In the intervening period, the reports have been filed. We got confirmation of that from the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections. And so making a recommendation that we impose a fine of $150 after the matter is reconsidered.
Discussion by the commission. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Commissioner Norman.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Commissioner Brammer.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to go ahead and accept the recommendation of the executive director. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye or raising your right hand.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And the final case on the docket this morning is case 2019 S-034, Jimmy Stewart for State Senate et al. The executive director has recommended that we reconsider the case, vacate the previous imposition of the per diem fine, and instead impose a fine of $100. Mr. Richter?
Yeah, this is a case in which the commissioner made the finding about a year ago, I think it was. And most recently, the reports have been filed with the Secretary's office. I believe the campaign committee is now determined or is now declared inactive or terminated. I've talked to Mr. Stewart, and he wanted this matter to move forward. He is up for consideration for a position, I think, on the Athens County Board of Elections. And he wanted to get this matter cleared up. And so I indicated to him that I would get it on this meeting and get it resolved. I'm confident in my recommendation here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richter. Questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Commissioner Norman.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Norman. Do we have a second?
Second, Kaufman.
All right, second. So we have a motion to go ahead and follow the recommendation of the executive director. Questions or comments? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye or raise your right hand. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That concludes the cases on the docket this morning. Phil?
Yeah, I will, other business. I'm adding one thing to the other business just to ask everybody to let me know if there's a problem. Well, first, I guess the next meeting of the commission is March 11th. Right now, we only have one hearing on that date. Duralia versus the Geauga Parks case that we set for hearing early last year. I will get it brought forward, at least hopefully, for consideration. If not, that matter, then the meeting may go away. But on March 25th, I'm hoping that everybody will be available. I have talked to the counsel for the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections at the Creighton County Recorder or at the Creighton County Prosecutor's Office on the Elkins matter, and indicated to them that while it originally said it could potentially go forward as soon as today, I knew Mr. Beatty was potentially not going to be present. And so we've agreed on March 25th. Again, this is a case that I would prefer to see everybody on and involved with. If anybody has, Mr. Forrest, Ms. Kaufman, Mr. Bromer, Mr. Norman, Ms. Cunningham, Mr. Kreitz, if you are aware of any conflict on the 25th, let me know. Otherwise, this matter will go forward on the 25th. They have supposedly worked out their set of stipulations that they will present to us. I am also presuming that council will have, at least based on my conversation with counsel for Mr. Elkins, they may have a difference on one particular issue that will be briefed separately potentially. But they are otherwise prepared to go on March 25th. And hopefully everybody will be present on March 25th.
Phil, we can expect those stipulations well in advance of the commission meeting on the 25th.
Let's put it this way. I am hopeful that that is the case. They have told them that they will get them to me in short order. I talked with them last Friday and they agreed to that date and said that they were very close to getting them done. I don't have them in hand, but hopefully as soon as I get them, I will forward them along to you all.
All right. Anything else? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'll just confirm. I'm looking at my calendar, 3:25. The only thing I've got is our hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good to go too. Is there anybody on the commission that has a problem with March 25th?
No.
Oh.
No, it looks like we're all good to go, other than probably need to confirm with Otto just to make sure he's going to be there.
Yes, I will do so. I will do so later today. Okay.
Okay.
That's all that's on the agenda today. Thank you very, very much for everybody's participation.
Phil, before we adjourn, one thing, signing the minutes. Where are we at with? I'm trying to think how far back we were having the minutes signed.
I think we got them done through November, December when I sent them out to everybody, and I've not. I got Mr. Norman's signature. I haven't got anybody else here in Columbus. We do need to go back and get now the January meeting. Now I'll get at least January, December. I'll probably circulate here by, like I did the last time, to get you and Natasha, although I'm considering if we could all, maybe we all just go ahead and submit signatures, electronic signatures. We can compare. I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris, get on, go ahead and unmute yourself and comment. Chris is going to comment here.
Hello. Would it be easiest, I mean, just kind of spitballing here, if everyone had just printed the last page of the minutes that shows the meeting date itself? It'll say, February 18th, and you've got all the signature lines at the bottom, but everybody just sends in an individual one, just mail it in to us that has your signature. And so the meeting itself will have 7 pages instead of 2, just because of everybody's signature page. Just kind of throwing that out there if that was an easier route.
Well, I know in the digital world, and I do filings at the court on a daily basis, we just do e-signature. We've all approved the minutes per our discussion, per recorded and through transcript. Can't we just put e-signatures and make it part of the file?
Yeah, well, Chris's suggestion is okay. I think that's okay as well. If everybody's good with that, just do an e-signature and send it along and we'll include it.
Dennis, wouldn't you prefer to drive down from Akron to sign those things in
Absolutely.
person? That's what
Without
I thought.
question.
Heck of a guy. Heck of a guy.
Send them to Scott in Florida and I'll drive down there.
Or we could all take them to Scott.
Oh, that's even better, Natasha.
Yeah, there you go. I think we've got room for everybody down there.
All right.
I do.
I think we should all get on a bus and come on
We
down.
stop at my place, we can go to his place, it's all good.
There you go. I like it.
All right.
Just bring along some Yingling for Scott. That's what he loves.
Hey, I want you to know that I went out of my way to make sure that I pronounced 9-9 today, okay? Not 9-er. All right. I had to look at that smirk on Dennis' face one more time when I said 9.
It wasn't as much fun though.
All right. Is there anything else to come before the commission? If not, then I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
In a second, all in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your right hand. Aye. Thanks. Be safe, all.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
That works. I think I left the minutes folder you gave me on my desk. I think they were all, yeah, well, I think they were all, press people. Yeah. Right. No, I know. Well, I'm just looking at my humble little face right at the moment. I'm letting the tape go a little bit longer. Well, that still was just about as long as every other one we've had lately. I'm sure that McTighe and Cameras are pissed. But I'm not going to say the commission's crazy for what they did. You know, like, I mean, maybe I'm too weak and easy, but at the same point, you know, I mean, I've got certain facts and circumstances for which I make my recommendation, I make it, and then they hear the arguments, they go forward. I'm good. Oh. Well. Yeah.